Hello ladies and gentlemen, Gabesy here. We're going to play some Hearthstone Arena here, and I'll do my best to walk through everything I'm doing. We'll start with the deck building process and drafting, and go through each card there and the pros and cons of the choices. And then we'll go through the playing, and in that talk about all the choice making there, logic, reason, all that good stuff. So first up, to pick the class, I think I'll go with Paladin. I haven't played it recently, and I like Paladin. Alright, so first we got an epic pick. Molten Giant is, in my opinion, kind of one of the middle of the giants. The Sea Giant, I believe it is the best one. It's reduced by, mana cost reduced by number of minions. This one's okay. Obviously, it costs one less for each damage that your hero's taken, and it starts with 20 mana. So if you're at 10 health or below, it's free, which is awesome. But that means you're at 10 health or below, obviously. So there are some games where you simply cannot ever play this, which is kind of unfortunate. Hungry Crab, you can't really rely on having enough Murlocs in Arena, so this is out. Even if your opponent plays Murlocs, it's likely a bad choice or just uncommon. So, yeah. Either way, it's not very good. Manipulator is the best choice here. You can copy anything you want, which is awesome for 5 mana. The Warden is not very good. The stats are pretty low. It's got a lot of health, so it's common for priests, but otherwise pretty bad. Rifleman doesn't have very good stats, even with the deal 1 damage. So Inventor's the clear pick here. Stats are mediocre, at least the attack, but you get card advantage by drawing again. Alrighty, so here we have Worgen, which is a solid card. It's a good 3-drop, 3/3, and the Enrage is really good. If you can manage to hit something and not die, you can then attack a second time, which is awesome. Magi is kind of mediocre. 4/4 for 4 is not great. The spell damage is usually not worth it. Blessing of Wisdom is pretty good. You can see you choose a minion with this buff, and when it attacks, you draw a card. So you can often get, you should get at least 1 card out of this. Often you can get multiples, and that's pretty solid. So we're going to grab that. Crocolisk is a standard 2/3 drop for 2. Redemption, you can see that you return a minion if it dies back to the field with 1 health. This is one of the better secrets for Paladin in my opinion, but it's still iffy to choose it this early in the draft when you have other better options. Basically, this is good if you want to return something that has an extra effect, like a Divine Shield, because it will come back with that. It does not trigger battle cries, however. Battle cries require that you play a minion from your hand. So for example, if you redeemed the Guardian of the Kings, it would not heal you again for 6 health. It would only be the first time you played it. And speaking of Guardian Kings, it's kind of not a great card, but it's good enough to choose here. 5/6 for 7 is pretty mediocre, but healing you for 6 can often be the difference between life and death if the game is close. So the combination is good enough, I think. Alright, Dragonhawk, meh. Again, the stats are pretty weak, even with Wind Fury, unless you have a deck built around buffing this and sort of going for the jugular of your opponent. You're not going to be able to keep this alive with 1 health. So this is better than a Hunter or Beast deck. The Razorfen Hunter is okay. Its total minion health and attack is 3/4 for 3, but because it's split up into 2, it's slightly weaker. And once again, we have Blessing of Wisdom. So I'm going to go for second Blessing of Wisdom. I think 2 is a solid number of those. Okay, so here we have Tarn Warrior. Stats are far too weak for a 3-drop. It will die to many 2-drops with 3 health. And even if it is able to enrage, it's really not going to kill anything. Most things, rather. So, yeah, not great. Hand of Protection, I think, is not very great. Basically, giving a minion Divine Shield for the cost of a card is usually not worth it. There are minions like the Protector, Argent Protector, that are not only a minion but give Divine Shield as well, which are far superior. Loot Hoarder is a good pick here. It's only got 1 health, of course, which is bad, but because of the Death Rattle, I'm drawing a card, and because it has 2 attack, it can sometimes trade with other 2-drops, and you keep card advantage. Alrighty, so Nightblade is pretty weak. 4/4 for 5 is bad, and dealing 3 damage to the enemy hero is not usually a priority, especially at that point in the game when you're at 5 mana. Blessing of Wisdom, I already talked about. I already have 2, I don't need another one. And Spellbreaker is a really good card. You get a decent minion, slightly undervalued in stats, but Silence puts it over the top. Okay. So, don't need the Murloc yet. It's the weakest of the picks here, I think. The Ghoul is a decent 3-drop. You should be able to trade your 2 for their 2 when you play it, so he becomes a 4/3 on play, and he can get much stronger, obviously. The Acolyte is also a decent card for drawing, but as a Paladin, we already have 2 Blessing Wisdoms, and I prefer a Cult Master with the Paladin hero ability, if possible. So I'm going to skip the Acolyte and go for the Ghoul here. The Geomancer is underpowered. Doesn't have enough attack or health for 2-drop. Unless you really need spell damage, which we don't. Leper Gnome is an okay 1-drop. I prefer the Infiltrator, the Worgen, because it's stealthed, but this guy has 2 attacks, so he can trade up sometimes. And he does 2 damage, even if he doesn't actually get to attack the hero. But the clear winner is Sen'jin. It's a solid 4-drop with 5 health. It can often survive other 4-drops or 3-drops you might be facing. Alright, Define Favor is very difficult to use properly. As you can see, you draw cards until you have as many as your opponent has in their hand. But more often than not, if the game is even, this card will draw you nothing, or maybe just like 1 card, basically spending the 3 mana and trading it for a different card, which is obviously wasteful. So you want to get at least 2 cards out of it. But the problem is, if you are that far behind in card advantage, probably means that you're losing the game anyway. And in that sense, this card might be better to just be something else in your hand that would have helped you earlier, before you reach that state in the game. So, I'm not a fan of it. More often than not, it's just impossible to use it properly. Mana Addict is not so great unless you're in Constructed, because the attack gain is only during the turn. You have to have a lot of spells. You have to have a really spell-heavy deck, Mage, Warlock, Druid, stuff like that. Defender is a really good card. 3/3 for 4 is not great, but you can often get +1/+1 at least, and usually you can get 2 in total from the Battlecry. Okay. Here we have Light's Justice, which is a pretty weak weapon. It's difficult to say whether it justifies a card in your deck. I usually would say no. But it's also technically 4 damage for 1 mana. The problem is you take damage, of course, when you attack. So it can be good to finish things off, but you just have to be prepared to take the hits when you use that. The Oracle's no good. Again, you want to have Murlocs in your deck. Consecrate is great. It's one of the strongest Paladin cards. Board clear as king in arenas, so we got to pick it up. And you might notice a trend in the mana curve here. This is typical of Paladins. A lot of their abilities or their strong cards are 4 mana costs. Hopefully we'll get a couple True Silvers, which are also 4. But Consecrate, you can see, is 4. So tends to be a pretty high point in the deck. Anyway, talked about the Magi. Obviously, Murloc Raider, not great. Again, you're not going to use a lot of Murlocs. And Protector is amazing. It's a support card, so it's important to keep in mind that you want other 2-drops that are actual 3/2 or 2/3 cards to support it. But if you can play one of those 2s and then, especially with a coin, and then play the Protector on turn 2 to Divine Shield it, you can often get early advantage pretty easily. So we're going to grab him. And no choice here. We'll get another protector. Voodoo Doctor is not worth it. Okay. Well, I can't afford a third Blessing of Wisdom. I think it's too much. And the Brewmaster is pretty good. And the Magi is underpowered. So even though these are both 4, we have no choice to get a 4. Brewmaster is the best pick. He's a 5/4, and we can send something like the Protector back to our hand for the Battlecry, or these guys, Spellbreaker. Yeah, a lot of good choices. Alrighty, here's another Paladin card for 4 mana we talked about. I think I'm going to skip it though right now since we have so much 4-drop, and go with the Regulator or Guardian. Probably the Guardian because we need more high-end. Blessing of Kings is a really good card though. 4/4 obviously is a great buff. And Regulator is actually decent for Paladins because you'll have a lot of the 1/1 minions out, so they can be buffed to 2/1s. But again, because of the curve, we only have one 7 card. We have no 6s, so we need more high-end late game. And we're halfway through now. Alrighty, Ancient Mage, the stats are pretty weak, specifically the attack is too low. So you only warrant this if you really need spell damage, which we do not. We only have 1 damaging card, which is Consecrate. Violet Teacher is alright. Stats are pretty good. But again, you're not going to use the ability unless you have a lot of spells. We have 3 spells, I believe. Yep. So unlikely to get a lot of value out of that. And since it summons 1/1s, we can do that anyway with our hero power as a Paladin. So I think the Pint Size is the best choice here. She's not a great 2-drop, but she will often trade with other 2s, and she can make your next play much cheaper if she's alive. Ooh, awesome. Legendaries. So I think Deathwing's probably one of the most well-known legendaries. He's a big game changer, potentially. You can see 10 mana, he destroys all minions, and you discard your hand. You get a 12/12, massive creature, or minion. Whoops. The problem with Deathwing is if the opponent has a removal spell, since their hand is not discarded, you pretty much lose the game. So it's a very gambly sort of play. It's awesome when things are close and you're both top decking, and this is the one of the last cards in your hand. You'll probably win in that situation, but if not, it's a very big risk, and usually not worth it for that reason. Blood Mage Thalnos is a pretty good 2-drop. You get a 1/1 with spell damage if you need the spell damage, and of course the Death Rattle means you maintain card advantage. But as a Paladin, this legendary Tyrion is amazing. So you get a 6/6 with Divine Shield and Taunt, so you should get a 2-for-1 trade, most likely. And he has a Death Rattle, which gives you a 5/3 weapon, which is crazy. So one of the strongest legendaries in the game, in my opinion. Awesome class legendary. Okay, here, finally we get some 3s, and a good one at that. Scarlet Crusader is a pretty good card. Because of Divine Shield and her 3 attacks, she can often get a 2-for-1 trade. Grizzly's stats are weak. Holy Light usually is not worth the card. Again, 1 card for 6 healing. You could look at the Guardian of Kings and get the 6 healing on your hero, as long as you wanted to heal your hero and not something else. And you get a 5/6 minion out of it. So usually Holy Light's not worth it. Anyway, Crusader's a clear winner, and we need 3s, so we'll grab her. Okay. This is a tough one. We've talked about all these cards, but the problem is our mana curve right now. We have 11 picks after this one. And you can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 4-drops. All of them are quite good. But the problem is we only have 2 3-drops. And I'm used to having a lot of 4s as a Paladin for sure. But the question is, can we justify having that few 3s? because even our 2s are pretty mediocre right now. We don't really have any strong 2 plays. Loot Hoarder is probably the only thing I'd absolutely want to play on 2. It wouldn't feel bad about playing. But the Protectors I don't want to play without battle crying something. So I think we have to go with the Razor Fen here, even though I'm not a fan of it as a 3 overall. Okay. Arcane Golem, just talking about 3s, but this is a bad one. Giving your opponent a mana crystal, unless you're playing this on turn 9 or 10 or later, it's terribly bad. You give them quite a big advantage, and it's simply not worth it. You get a 4/2 with charge for 3 mana. It's really not great, you know. Plus a champion, I think is not so great either. It's kind of a card that would allow you to finish a game in some situations. So, you know, if you took a really strong minion, you know, Tyrion, Guardian, these are not even that great examples, but if you had a 7/7 or something like that, you could double the attack, do crazy damage, right? That would be awesome. But those situations are rare, and it usually means you're winning the game anyway. You're typically not going to need to double a minion's attack to kill something, and if you do, that means you're spending another card to do it. More often than not, a Blessing of Kings would be better than this card in that situation because it would give health to your minion, and your minion would probably survive the trade. So, not the greatest card is basically what I'm saying. On the other hand, these other 2 options are not better in this scenario. So, it's a long-winded way of saying I normally would pick something else if possible over this, but in this case, because of our mana curve and these other choices, this is the best one. Oh man, why do we have to get Light's Justice so many times? Where's True Silver? Well, I really can't justify Nightblade here. I mean, Magi has the same basic stats. The battle cry is just not worth it. Even though it's a 5-drop, I would just rather have a 4 and float a mana to get a better minion overall. So we'll have to go with the Magi. Alright, good. We got a good 2-drop, which we really need. Frostful Warlord is great for Paladin, because you're going to usually have a lot of these weak minions. You can get a good battle cry out. But we really need the Ooze. Need some 2-drops. Aha! There's a True Silver. So weapons are king for classes that can use weapons, and this is a really strong one, so we're going to grab the True Silver. It's also worth noting that Humility is a pretty good card, but there is an Aldor Peacekeeper card, which is a 3/3 minion for 3 that has the same effect as a Battle Cry, which is far superior. So just keep that in mind when you're drafting Paladin. Depending when you actually see Humility, if you can get an Aldor Peacekeeper instead, that's usually better. So we're going to get True Silver anyway. Alright, here we go. So I'm getting some more mid to late game cards. So we have plenty of 4s, even though Brewmaster's good. Corehound is not strong enough in terms of health. Fen Creeper is actually pretty solid. His 6 health means he lives against many attacks. And then you can usually trade him if needed. So we're going to grab him. Ooh, that's a tough choice. Footman is terrible. You should almost never get this card. 1/2 is simply not good enough. It will die to most things and not kill something. The Stormwind Champion is an amazing card in almost every deck, and Paladins in particular. It's really good since it can buff your 1/1 minions. However, I think mana curve might have to dictate the Fairy Dragon, sad as that may be. Because if we look at our 2-drops, the only things we have that we want to play on 2 are the Ooze, the Hoarder, and we could play the Pint Size. I really don't want to play the Protector. So ideally I would get 4 to 5 play on 2 cards. So this would be number 4. With the Protectors bringing up our potential 2s to 6. And let's take a look though, if we can get away with that. Our late game consists of 2 Guardians and 1 Tyrion. Oh, that's a tough choice. Because we don't have really any 3s that are really great either. The Hunter's pretty weak, Crusader's good, but the Ghoul is only really good if you had a 2 and you traded. And if that 2 was something like a pint-sized, or a Hoarder, or really anything but the Ooze, it would not necessarily kill their 2-drop. So we're going to have to go Fairy Dragon. Oh, that's funny. Well, now we can get a champion, but as I say many times, weapons are king, and I think this is no exception. In spite of having so many 4s, I think I would rather have another True Silver, make it 2 weapons. Yeah, I gotta go with that. I think the games are generally decided mid-game, early to mid-game. Especially if you are Paladin or Shaman where you have minions that you can summon all the time. These are tough choices though, I'll be honest. But I'm going to go True Silver. Alrighty, well. Normally I think the War Golem's a bad card, but it is a late game card, and we could use a couple. We don't have any 6s, so 7's going to have to substitute there. And the Tide Hunter just does not cut it for 2-drops. It's a 3-2 technically in total, but because it's split up, it will die to Druids, Mages, Rogues, stuff like that. Rager suffers from the same issue, but it's even worse because it's 3-drop. So we're going to go War Golem. And we're getting down to the wire, last few picks. Worgen is the winner here. We don't need a Humility yet. Or, arguably ever. It's a good card, but it's not great compared to a Peacekeeper. And we need more 3-drops. So Worgen wins. Ooh. Second Consecrate is awesome. Again, 4-drops out the ass. But what are you going to do? They're all good, except the Magi. And Inventor is meh. But yeah, Consecrate is worth it. That'd be the second one. Ah, there's a Peacekeeper. So he's a clear winner here. Swordsmith is not good enough. You have to protect him for a long time to get value. Otherwise, he's just a 1-3. Auctioneer is only good if you're using a lot of spells, which we are not. And we have 2 Blessing of Wisdom for card draw. And as I said, Peacekeeper is a great card. So get him. All right, there we go. So we'll see how the 2 early game goes. Again, we have a couple solid 2-drops protected by protectors, hopefully. So if we go second and can coin out a 2 and then protector it, it's great. Our 3s are average, I would say. Peacekeeper's good. Ghoul can be good. Worgen's pretty good. Razor Hunter's weak. Crusader's good. 4s, as typical for a Paladin, are pretty stellar overall, with the exception of the Magi. And then late game is pretty good. We're missing some 6s, so we don't have a good curve in the late game. But we can subsidize that as a Paladin with playing 1/1s on the filler turns, basically. So we can, on turn 6, play a 4 and a 2 mana 1/1 or something. Alright, anyway. Let's see how we do.
Uther versus Gul'dan.
Alrighty. Game number 1 of our Paladin run. We're against a Warlock, and we are going first, and we got all 4s, which is pretty typical of a Paladin. So I'm going to drop everything but the weapon. I think the weapon's worth keeping. And see what we get. Nope. Not... Well, it is technically better. It's more of a curve. I would have liked some low cost, though. So we may have to use our hero power on 2. Which is terrible against that. But we have no choice.
Reporting for duty.
So he's going to coin on a 3, protected by his taunts. Oh, interesting. Okay. That's not bad. I think we want to Peacekeeper it, though, right away. And... yeah. It's worth it. Get rid of that early advantage. He spent 2 cards already, so making a 1/6 is solid. It'll obviously kill our 1/1, but not a huge issue. And he cannot silence it. It would become a 3/3, it looks like. So he's going to life tap. And hopefully that's the end of that. No? Flame him. Okay. So, I was going to ghoul, but since he played that, I think it's best to True Silver it, kill it. And then this can attack that. Or we could actually just ignore it. Although if we ignore it, then it would be threatening to our Hoarder or a 1/1 later. So I changed my mind. I'll attack it. We can afford to take 1 damage. Hopefully he doesn't have an ooze. And you'll notice, if you're not aware, the True Silver is a 4/2 weapon for 4. But when you attack, it restores 2 health to the hero. So it's a good way to offset some of the damage you'll take. It's a pretty good weapon. Alrighty. So, looks like our Peacekeeper will die next turn. But what we could do is Ghoul and Loot Hoarder. The Ghoul will be buffed to a 4/3 when we attack this with our Peacekeeper and our weapon to finish it. And the Loot Hoarder counters this if he decides not to kill the Peacekeeper with it.
Mind if I roll knee? Last one for justice. Job's done.
And we got a heal. Oh, I don't know why I thought that was going to be 4/3. For some reason, my brain was saying this was going to die on that attack. But this should become a 4/3 when one of these dies from this thing. Well, that was weird. The arrow looked like he was hitting the ghoul. So... aw. Goodbye, ghoul. I'll miss you. Loot Hoarder. I think I'll Fen Creeper and save my Loot Hoarder rather than trade. Let me think about what he could do.
Let me think.
With the loot. I mean, he could power Overwhelming it to kill the Fen Creeper. So I changed my mind. Oops, I can't play that. I think trading is probably better. And in fact, I should have attacked first. Oh well, doesn't matter. So pretty soon now, I'm going to be looking to use Blessing of Wisdom. Try to draw some card advantage here. Because we basically have a really late game hand. 3 7s and a Manipulator. Okay. So here's probably a good time to Blessing of Wisdom, because he may not be able to kill our Fen Creeper with that Berserker alone. He's going to be looking to buff it.
I wonder.
Okay, adventure. So we'll play this. Draw another card. Ooh, nice. And the dragon. So we'll see if he can get rid of this guy in this turn or not. It's obviously a prime target with Blessing of Wisdom now. Hellfire would be pretty decent here. He would buff that. Ah, silence. That sucks. Oh well. So now I would like him to Hellfire. Alright, let's see here. Tyrion's obviously a really strong card, especially because he's silenced. He's unlikely to have another.
I wonder.
The other option would be to manipulate or something. And protector this, and then send these two guys into that. But then this thing is still alive. Or we could just kill that with this, but then this guy will become pretty crazy. I
wonder. Move quickly.
I think Tyrion's okay here.
Put your faith in the job done.
The demo has a 25% chance of hitting this and breaking the shield, which would suck. But okay, good. So hopefully he doesn't have a second silence. That would be brutal. But if he doesn't, we can faceless it next turn, which is insane, obviously.
I wonder.
Alright, I don't think he has a silence. He would have done it already. Obviously, it would be ideal to faceless Arturian while it's at full health and has Divine Shield, but that's really unlikely. Even if you played it against an empty board, most opponents will try to get rid of it quickly.
So many.
Although, now that I think about it, depending what he does, we may be able to at least Divine Shield it with this before copying, which would be pretty good. Yeti. Is he going to attack? Looks like it. Aw. Oh well. Alright, yeah, that looks pretty good. So, I'm going to Divine Shield this, and make a copy of it, and have crazy stuff now.
Don't test me.
Jesus. Alright, so obviously hit that, trade for that. I'm going to maintain a... Like, this is terrifying, right? This is a potential for 2 5/3 Ashbringer weapons. So I'm going to hold on to some cards and start playing some 1/1s here, because I think we have a pretty clear advantage at this point. It's just a ridiculous card to copy. It's like something you'd see in Constructed. Multiple legendaries of the same type.
To Northrend.
Urgent Commander.
Loaded.
Rifleman. So that's pretty debatable about that choice. I mean, you can ping this for one with the Rifleman, get rid of the Divine Shield, and prevents something from taking 6 damage to do that otherwise, right? Another Pargent Protector. This is why this card is so crazy. So one option is to sack that into the 2 or this thing and draw our weapon, start smacking him in the face. But it's probably better just to play it safe.
Not on my watch. Don't test me, child.
Kill that.
This is my
And our 2/2 can kill that.
test me, child.
And we don't need to restore 6 yet, so we'll get the stronger big guy out.
Job's done.
My buddy's noticing. Abomination's pretty good here. It will kill that, break Divine Shield, potentially kill this. But again, we get a crazy weapon out of it. Ah, damn. So we're not going to be able to kill that. Oh, yes we can. We drew silence. Alright, well, it's game over. Quite severely. Yeah, that just wasn't fair. Like, Tyrion's amazing in his own right, and being able to copy him and throw some Divine Shields up as well. I mean, yeah. Not fair in any way. But I'll take the win.